Anyhow, I think we are ready to call our meeting to order. No one is needing to be excused. So we have the adoption of the minutes from our last meeting, which seems like a long time ago, January 21st. Anne-Marie? We'll move.
Yeah, we'll move.
All right. Seeing no other hands up, all in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. And is there any post-agenda items? I know there have been things added to our agenda as we've gone along today. Kevin?
We have two items, one legal matter and one labor matter, please.
For in camera?
Yes, please.
Anything else? All right, could I get a motion to adopt the agenda? Hubie moves. All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. And we're at our question period notice of motion. So I'll take the opportunity to see if anyone else is going to join us in that regard. But just to go through the different delegations today, because there are quite a few. At 11 o'clock, we first have Telus coming or appearing. 11:30, we have a public hearing session today. And at 11:45, we have Cole. 1 o'clock, we have Morgan from our staff. And at 1:30, Will from Elemental Energy. So lots of time frame things to watch out for today. Just let another minute pass in case someone is trying to ask a question. Looking at our agenda, we could resume with the Ag Services business item, which is 10 on our agenda when we start up again. So heads up to our moderator. And I think we will go to item 10 now then, please. Todd, are you available?
I am available and happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
You bet. Please proceed.
So official. All right, so I think just wanted to talk a little bit about the Emerson Bridge Park and seasonal campsites. With the COVID stuff last year, we kind of decided to open the opportunity for some long-term camping, and we did receive, I don't know, good and bad feedback on it. We had 3 people take advantage, so that was good, and we've had a few people calling this year also wondering if they would be able to do that again. So that's it's nice that people want to spend the whole season down at Emerson. I tried to outline a little bit of information for you guys on kind of the revenues that we see from individual sites. Last year we had our seasonal site set at $2,000 for the season. And we do have some sites that make a little bit more than that, some sites that are very close, and then a whole host that are kind of getting there but not quite there. So we're hoping that we can come up with a nice program that'll allow a certain amount of sites to be available for seasonal use. We still think that there is some money that is put into Emerson from our local tax base, and we want our local ratepayers to be able to still have some access to the park. And so we were thinking if council approved that we would set up a program to allow a certain amount of sites, whether that's 10% of the sites, 5%, 20%, whatever we could come up with here today. And then we would recommend probably the same rate as last year at $2,000 also. So, is there any questions on that?
Brian?
Thanks, Todd. My question is mostly around the seasonal concept, and I guess it's mostly in regards to, do all the other parks in the area offer seasonal sites? I know Crawling Valley and the Rolling Hills Reservoir do, but I wasn't sure about the provincial ones, whether they offer a seasonal option. And with the ones that you know of, if whoever that is, the second part of that question is, what is that amount? And that's just for my curiosity. I'm not suggesting that we need to be even close to that. I'm just curious what that would be.
Yeah, that's a great question. And I had it in my head to call the EID and ask them what their rate was going to be for this season, and I never did. I apologize for that. We did have a meeting with the Rolling Hills Advisory. I'm going to say that was last week. And they did mention that the Rolling Hills Ag Society runs the campground down there in Rolling Hills in Hamlet, and their seasonal rate is $1,200 for power. And maybe somebody else has had a seasonal site at the reservoir before. I thought it was significantly higher than our 2,000, but I can't remember. Like, I'm going to say it was even in the $3,000 range. And I apologize, I never did look into that. We based our price just on kind of our average daily and try to give a little bit of a benefit to the long-term stay.
Kevin?
So we had a seasonal at Rolling Hills Res about 2 or 3 years ago, and they have different rates between whether you're top tier or bottom tier, and it's about $2,100 for the top tier, and then if you get down by the water, it's about $2,500 to $2,600.
Thanks, Kevin. So Todd, last year, did you just let the seasonals choose their site, or did you designate the site?
Yeah, so last year we opened it wide open. The seasonals, anybody that was interested in seasonal could pick whatever site they were wanting to spend their time in. And I think at that time we weren't confident that we were going to be able to open any of the park to normal camping date, like overnight camping. So kind of that played a little bit into it. We're really hopeful this year that we'll follow similar summer guidelines for as we did last year's COVID, which would mean that the campground would be open for regular business. So we were thinking that it would be best to identify sites that would be available for seasonal.
Yes, and I think it's interesting that you've already had calls and from different people as well. And camping was certainly, there was great take up in it last year. So I'm sure after another year has passed here that we've put in a full year, that excitement is not going to diminish in the summer. And yeah, I think it's a great concept to have a bit of a mix. Any other questions? Kevin?
Madam Reeve, I should never rely on my memory. It was 2,100 for the bottom and 2,320 for the top. Back when the last time that they had seasonals. Last year they didn't do it, I don't think, because of the COVID and the provincial regulations, and they're waiting to post for this year. It's still not up, but that's their rates that are posted on the website.
Brian?
So I think if I understand you, Todd, you were looking for a percentage, and I'm not a camper, so I don't necessarily know, but I guess in my mind I would suggest that we could make available up to 50% of the campsites. Is that logical? Is it reasonable? It doesn't seem like we were anywhere close to that this past year, but you know, I certainly wouldn't want to go much above that. Unless you camper people think we should, but yeah, I don't know. I'm a bit of a loss. I think you're looking for a recommendation as far as a percentage. I favor your option 2. I just don't know what that percentage should be. So
Yeah, and I don't know that we had a number set in stone in our heads, Brian. We know that our typical use of Emerson is the weekend type camping, and we're happy to have those people camp there for sure. I probably wouldn't even go as high as 50% in my mind. It's hard to know what the world's going to look like and how many people are going to be interested in looking for something like that. I would aim a little lower at maxing out at a 10 or 20%. That would be somewhere between 6 and 12 sites that would be taken. And I think one of the reasons I think that, Brian, is just because when somebody does come in for a seasonal site, specifically last year, certainly some of the more popular sites were the ones that were easily chewed up by the seasonal sites. So if we were to offer 50% of our sites up for seasonal, we might get rid of a lot of the more popular sites. We only have 64 in general and 49 power, so that would eat up a lot of the more popular sites that would be gone for the whole season. So I would probably aim for that 10 to 12 range of sites at the high end. And I guess it's such an operational question, and it's just so different than what we normally do at Emerson. That's why we kind of wanted to talk about it here and get a feel for how you guys wanted to go down that road.
Clarence?
Well, I'm going to admit that I know nothing about this, and I'm not a camper, and I feel pretty comfortable in whatever Todd, who is probably more familiar with the sites and with what's happening there than any of us, whatever his recommendation is, to go with that. So if you're saying 10 to 12%, sounds logical to me. If we still find that we have lots of weekend open and that we're, get that balance somewhere, we can change it next year, but I'm quite prepared to go with whatever you are recommending.
I would second that sentiment as a camper. Hubie?
Molly, Todd, does it seem like it's very competitive for people wanting to get in those sites?
Well, Emerson is one of the last first come, first serve campgrounds. So it is relatively competitive. We find that people that want a very specific site will often book a few days ahead of time or come in a few days ahead of time. So in that regard, it's competitive. But when you look at the numbers, 37% occupancy, I wouldn't say that's generally very competitive. I think there's still lots of opportunity. And Emerson boasts so many great campsites. It's just when people are going to spend the time and the money, they often want something specific to their needs. And
Ellen?
Todd, do we advertise for Emerson Bridge at all on any website or anywhere?
We do, yeah. There's a publication that the Brooks Bulletin puts out. I believe it's the Brooks Bulletin puts it out, that we put an ad in that. We're also on the Alberta Tourism. They have a brochure that they put out. We're in there. Of course, we have our website and social media. And a lot of our advertising is word of mouth, which is kind of nice, I think. It's the most effective, I believe. And the people that call us, I'm not sure how effective our advertising is, because the people that I get calls from, it's very random, and they always say, you know, I was driving down the 36 highway and I always mean to stop in there, and I did, and you have a beautiful campground and I just want to come back. And it's like, well, that's great. And I'm like, how did you not hear about it on all these other platforms? And, you know, a lot of people don't follow the County of Newell on social media, unfortunately, and I always recommend they do because we put out such great information. Yeah, I think word of mouth is definitely our biggest advertisement, and we try to do the best we can with the rest. So just a few, Ellen, not a whole bunch. Sorry, if that answers your question.
Yes, thank you, Todd.
Add one other thing. I think obviously if we get the camp spots that are starting to make more money than seasonals from a business perspective, I think it makes sense not to limit that, because when I look at that report, there's only 4 that were over the 2,000, and obviously the rest are under. So to me, when we're looking at additional revenue, I know from talking to Christine last year that the seasonals are a lot easier to maintain and work with than people coming and going. So I think there are some benefits. So not that I want to speak against what Todd's recommending, but I do think that we need to keep in mind the revenue side of this, maybe not this year, but for the future for sure.
No, I think we should be considering that as well. So we have a couple of options, and Todd is recommending option 2, which is to determine a limited number of sites to offer for seasonal and allow people interested to choose, book, and pay for them prior to the park opening. And so that is fairly wide open, and I think I'm hearing that we would like Todd probably to determine the limited number of sites. He's sort of thrown out a 10% idea, but it's a bit of a play it by ear as the season opens and the rules change. And I don't think I don't believe Crawling Valley had seasonal sites last year either, did they, Kelly? No. So it's you know, as people learn that they're, and maybe they will this year, but Todd, is it okay if we sort of leave that option a little bit open rather than determine specifically?
Yeah, I think that would be fantastic, and that gives us enough guidance to move forward with something. And we'll probably be back with a policy update at some point in time, because we do have those first come first serve things outlined in there. So we'll work on that quick and get something in front of you again, and looking forward to the season.
So then option 2 would be fine the way it's written then, Todd? Or you want it to loosen up?
That certainly works for me.
Okay. Lionel.
I'll make that motion and let Todd decide what to determine what percentage we use. Option 2.
Any further discussion on that? All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you, Todd. Good timing, everyone. We are close to 11 o'clock, and our Telus delegation, Teresa, has joined us. And so if you could go to your agenda item for 11 o'clock, which is item 9.1. we can have Teresa join us. Teresa, can you hear me? Perfect. All right, welcome. I might just quickly go around our group who is at the table today and introduce them myself rather than have a bunch of mics coming off and on just for expedience. I'm Molly Douglas, and I am the Reeve of the County of Newell, and I come from the northern part of the county out by the Red Deer River on Highway 36. And I'm going to go to our Div 1 down in the south, which is Clarence Amulung. And that's the area around Rolling Hills. And then moving over to Div 2 is Hubie Kalen, and that's the area, the Tilly area. Div 3 is the Patricia area, Anne-Marie Phillipson. Div 4 is Wayne Hammergren, and he represents Bow City, Rainier, and Scandia, hamlets and areas. Div 5 is Tracy, and that's the area around Castles and Lake Newell Resort. Div 6 is Kelly Chrisman on the west side of our county, Bizano. Div 7 is Ellen Unraw from the Rosemary region. Div 8 is Brian DeJong from the Dutchess area north of Brooks. I'm from Div 9, and Div 10 is Lionel Just, we're saving the best till the end, who is the area around sort of, I don't know, east, north sort of area, One Tree around Brooks. So that's who we are, and we do have some other staff, of course, available or at our table today, but we'll just let you, well, actually, I'll maybe go back to our staff who's involved with this. It's Lane, correct? I believe that's got this one. I haven't got my agenda here in front of me.
Prepared a cover report for council introducing the information that Teresa has submitted. So I think probably just appropriate to let her go ahead with her presentation.
Thanks, Lane. Welcome, Teresa. Maybe you can tell us a little bit about your work with Telus.
Sure. So we'll check first. Can you hear me? It took me a minute to come off of mute. Just some nods. Okay, sweet. So my name's Teresa Lynn, and I live east of Red Deer, out in the country. So I am one of these people that has poor internet coverage, which is quite ironic considering what I do for a living. My job with Telus is a little bit of a mixed bag. So I run the day-to-day operations for the field techs. So people like Cliff Peterson and Bassano and Brooks, those folks work for me. So all of those little guys out there in the white trucks and gals, those are my staff. And I've been kicking around off and on in the area since 2008. So we rejig the area periodically, and sometimes I have south of Highway 1 and sometimes I don't. But I have it back again. There's some advantages to being a country girl having a fairly rural demographic that I represent. The biggest part of my job is to be your guys' advocate, cheerleader, one throat to choke inside of Telus when you need something done. So that's things like advocating for cell coverage, which is certainly a problem out in much of that area. Advocating for improved DSL or internet connectivity in your communities, sharing employment opportunities and initiatives that we're doing, community investment, emergency response during fires and floods and tornadoes and whatever else. So I have a bit of a mixed bag when it comes to my municipal relations. I cover everything from Ponoka down to the US border, Saskatchewan to BC, with the exception of the city of Calgary. So I always say quite cheeky, they're so high maintenance, they get their own GM. I get the other 214 communities in my region. So I know historically we've had some coverage issues out there, and that's what I'm here today to ask for a letter of support from the county for an application that we are currently preparing for the Universal Broadband Fund. My understanding is there are some other initiatives that have approached your region for a letter of support for connectivity out there. So I just want to clarify that what we're looking for is in regards to mobility and the internet service that we provide through the mobility network. So in the lens of today, that's the area that we're talking about, is the people that use the Telus Smart Hub product. And the people that use data off of their cell phones or the mobility networks. So the goal of the application is to secure the funding to upgrade the towers in the area so that we can do 50 meg download and 10 meg upload off the existing LTE network. So that's not contingent on 5G spectrum. 5G spectrum, when added into this upgrade, will allow speeds closer to 1 gigabit per second. But what we're talking about today is the LTE existing network that's out there and the upgrades required to get your rural customers to 5010. So I think I'll stop right there because we might have some questions at this point, Madam Reeve, and from the rest of Council and Administration.
Thank you, Teresa. Questions? Brian.
Thank you, Teresa. Can you hear me?
I can. Thanks, Brian.
Okay, so just so I'm clear, this is not, because we provided a letter for our primary internet provider to support their application too. And I guess from my perspective, I'm a little reluctant to provide a letter for all those that come and ask when they're not our primary internet provider. Now, when you use the phrase LTE, I mean, this phone uses that too. So I'm just curious, you need to clarify for me, are we talking about two different things about providing a letter of support for, or are we overlapping as far as what you're asking us for?
Thanks, and that's a good question. I kind of suspect there might have been a few people pondering the same thing. So I would say there are two things that can accomplish the same goal depending on what people are doing. So if your primary internet provider that you've supported a letter for is doing wireline-based service or traditional DSL type service, usually those are in a more dense, your hamlets, your towns, your cost-effective places to connect them, either point-to-point through a wireless connectivity or wired in the ground. That is not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about data through the mobility network, data through a cell phone, the ability to live stream your kid's soccer game, the ability to use the Telus Smart Hub, of which we've got quite a few users in that region that do that because there is no other provider in that area, nor would I expect there to be another provider in a lot of those. So you think about cell coverage in your region, and the options that are out there, this is targeted to that, not to compete with whatever other entities you're supporting. Now, that said, admittedly, if there is a customer in Bassano that wants to use their device or a smart hub to do their internet, this would, in that case, solve that need, even though your other company may be there. So I would say I don't view them as competing. I view them as complementary, particularly in the business lens. A business needs connectivity at the office to function. Their employees need connectivity on the highway to do their jobs as well. So I view them in parallel. I don't view them as competing. The last thing I want to do is come in and squish a local provider. That's not being neighborly. That's not what I want to do.
Okay, thank you for that.
You're
so
welcome.
Teresa, does this would this provide better cell service?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So from a voice connectivity, it'll just improve that by nature of the upgrades. The application is around data. So by solving the data problem and upgrading the tower, it will upgrade the voice side of the equation just by doing the upgrades. So they go in hand in hand.
Kelly.
Teresa, thank you for that. And always great to get upgrades and that sort of thing. When was this tower last upgraded? Can you give us some information on that?
I don't have that, Kelly, but I can get the data from our mobility team on when they did the last upgrades, if you'd like it. I suspect it's when we flipped from 3G to LTE.
Okay. Whenever we get improved service, I'm in favor. So I would like to make a motion to support this project and wish you luck in getting funding.
Thank you, Kelly. And I commit to come back and telling you guys how it went. I would also say a letter of support doesn't preclude any of the traditional approvals that would be required for anything that we do. So if we decide to build a new cell tower, you guys get to go through the regular process of approvals and consultations and everything as usual. This is just a letter of endorsement to the federal government that you guys want the investment in your area.
So Teresa, these are towers that are shared, correct, with your competition?
Yeah, so that is a federal regulation. Anybody who builds a cell tower in Canada is required by law to share it and co-locate with any other provider at set leased rates that are determined by the government, so we don't get to price them out of the market, as presuming that there is adequate strength and girth and bandwidth on the tower to support the extra infrastructure. So we do it all the time. It's standard course of business.
And so are you thinking that there would actually be some more towers built in the County of Newell?
I'm thinking we have to build some more towers in the County of Newell. Like eventually, this is just what we're going to have to do if you look at where technology is going to be 5 years from now. The specific request right now for UBF is to upgrade the existing towers. Yeah.
Thank you. Anne-Marie?
Lane, with regards to ExploreNet. You mentioned ExploreNet in your outline that you gave us. So where is the difference here between the two?
That's a good question. ExploreNet also uses a wireless service, but I believe that their application is primarily for fixed geographic locations, whereas the Telus solution, I think, is for their mobile cellular network. Maybe Teresa would be in a position to just provide some additional clarification on that.
Yeah, for sure. So the way their network works is you need a line of sight between your network at your tower at your house, so to speak, your antennas at your house, to where their feeder system works, and it shoots the signal back and forth that way. Ours will come through the broader mobility network. So similar but different. Yeah.
Any other questions? Lane?
Molly, I would just suggest that the EID system is probably quite similar to that which ExploreNet is providing as well. The EID does not have direct hardwired connection. Theirs is a point-to-point communication as well, much like ExploreNet's was supposed to be.
Any other questions? Kelly, Wayne?
A comment. I know some people who are using the Telus system right now, and they're using it because they cannot get to the EID net. They can't get reception, whereas they can work with Telus. So this would help people who are in areas where they just can't get that tower connection.
Any other comments? Kelly has a motion on the table to support.
Tracy.
Oh, Tracy, thank you.
I was just wondering on that note, just what is the difference then between the Telus and ExploreNet? Because we did discuss and we refused a letter of support for ExploreNet, and it was based on the same. Well, part of the discussion was that there are areas in our county that can only get ExploreNet. So what is the difference between this Telus request and the ExploreNet request?
So I can't speak to the ExploreNet request, but I will say that our ability is people on the move. So if you think of the other providers as being a modem in your house, right? And it's going to provide connectivity to your home or your barn or your farm or your business. Ours is mobile. So that is the distinction between the two. What they're providing is a facility-based connection. You're going to have equipment that's in that location and locked to that location. What I'm saying is I came in at the end of a discussion around campsites. People at the campsite will use this to upload pictures of their family vacation. They're not going to use CCI unless you happen to provide some type of Wi-Fi network at the campground through that connection. So there's the delineation between the two. Ours isn't tied to a geographic location with a tower outside your house or an antenna built into your house. That help?
I think
yes,
so.
Thank you for that. Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome.
So then the recommendation that Lane has given us, then Lane, it would be accurate to say that would be changed because this is a different type of situation than EID and ExploreNet.
Correct, and there wouldn't be a problem in approving a letter of support on the basis that it is a different application, a different solution.
Okay, and that would be Kelly's motion that she was putting forth. So is there any other questions or comments? All right, we'll take a vote on the motion so Teresa will know what we're up to one way or the other. Oh, Mark, did you have something? And Clarence?
I just wanted to add that we've heard from Lake Newell Resort residents at Hamlet advisory meetings and stuff of dropped calls, mobility challenges and stuff. So to confirm your position there, Teresa, it's not limited to Lake Newell Resort. It also includes the Rosemary area. Of course, Rosemary is their own municipality, but I know that our community peace officers lose connection with their radio command center through cellular and stuff when they're in patrols in those areas. And so I want to reassure council that there is a need, not just from our ratepayers, but our own operational perspectives for any improved cellular mobility kind of connectivity is going to go a long way for a lot of things, and will also work better for us as we have mobilized our workforce with remote devices to work from the field, and that communication is getting to be more and more essential for us for efficiency purposes and operations. And that's all I have.
Thanks, Mark. Clarence, did you have something?
You know, I think it bears some discussion on why we did not approve the ExploreNet the ExploreNet project, And it's because of, you know, of course, the fact that it was Eastern Irrigation District who we all support in their internet business, because quite frankly, they came here well before anybody else was there, and the Eastern Irrigation District is owned by many of the same residents as are living in the county of Newell that we represent. So I think what we have to have is, if this is, I understand kind of the difference here, but I think we need a chat with the Eastern Irrigation District and someone who's familiar with their stuff, that how this all combines and how it's different and so forth. Because the last thing we want to do is do anything which makes basically what we can say is our population owned system less effective, because that's something that we probably have relied on to this day. And I think we have to have I certainly need a better understanding of all of it. I can grasp that this is certainly different. I'm not sure what we did when we nixed the ExploreNet project. I'm not sure, because our county has always encouraged industry, but I guess if it's your own project that you're bringing in the competition for, then you have to kind of guess that a little, and then you have to make sure that that's really what's happening before we would not approve it. So anyway, I think we need, quite frankly, I think we need a little bit more information. I feel very uncomfortable even today voting for this. I probably would vote in favor of the Telus one, but I just think we need a third party in here to tell us exactly how that affects them.
This application has a timeline, Teresa?
It does. February 14th is the final day for us to submit. There is talk that deadline may slide from the federal government. I haven't seen anything official come in.
All right, Kelly.
I cannot believe that we would halt on this. This is innovative. This is production. I'm on Wi-Fi telephone, and I have issues at times. Crawling Valley residents, seasonal, mind you. If the north country of the Bazzano area wasn't all Hutterite colonies, those would be requiring higher needs in cellular reception right now or for the past 20 years. So I cannot believe that we're going to slow the process of internet, of cellular, and we're right on the #1 corridor. Come on, let's get with it. This is a letter of support.
Well, I live in the North Country as well. And certainly I know that there are lots of spots around us that cell phones don't work at.
Yeah.
So if that's what this is about, I have no problem supporting the concept either. Anne-Marie.
Well, after listening to the difference between EID and ExploreNet and Telus, I'm with you, Kelly. If I have to cut down trees to get reception from the tower that I could see, and here I have a wireless system, and yeah, I'll give that letter of support too. It makes sense to me.
And going forward, we can get more information as well as Clarence's suggestion. All right, I'm going to call the question. All in favor of writing a letter of support? Opposed? Motion is carried.
Thank you very much.
And Lane will continue to be your connection to that letter and receiving it.
Thank you. I'd also like to extend the invite. I know there appears to be some outstanding questions about what we have out there and where. And as I mentioned to Lane, our goal is never to trip on local business or local industry or local initiatives. That's not what I want to do. I'm a small town girl, right? You don't make friends by stomping on anybody. So if there's cooperation and initiatives, if we know EID is building over here and nobody's looking at another pocket, tell me that pocket needs to be addressed and I'll go look at that. And if you tell me where the other ones are going without breaking any confidentiality, I will ensure that we don't, intentionally go in and do something damaging to local business. That's not what we want to do. There is plenty of places for us to invest in this province that don't involve us compromising an initiative by your residents. So I want to be really transparent about that you guys can help guide our investment where you want it on the landline side. So, I'm here to come back anytime you want to put me in the hot seat and ask me questions.
Did you actually say the word landline?
I did. I know, but we roll our eyes, but you think we have a portion of your county that cannot get a cell phone signal right now. That's all they have.
Yeah, and I realize that. I'm saying that a little bit tongue-in-cheek because our landline has been awful for so many years that we finally gave it up, and that's a difficult thing for us old people to do. And then the next battle was, sometimes it would, because we're used to having our names in telephone books, that
Yep.
how do you get your cell number in a telephone book? And so that is an impossible thing I discovered. In fact, I found out that Telus employs people that don't even know what a telephone book is. So,
yeah,
interesting.
Yeah, it's that younger generation, of which I've got 5 children in that classification. And if you asked our 5 sons what a telephone book is, I'm pretty sure my 17-year-old would have no idea. And his mom works for the phone company. Like, this is bad.
Yeah, it's interesting. Clarence, did you have another comment? And you're not mute. You're muted.
Yeah,
Clarence.
thanks, Molly. Right now I have 2 questions. One is a question. One is I want to make sure we follow up and that we become more educated on this in this field. I felt fairly comfortable voting yes this time. I felt very comfortable voting no the last time for the other company, but I'm not sure I know that I don't totally understand the difference. And I think we owe everyone the effort to find out exactly what's going on and what's competition and what's not competition. And I think we have to do that fairly quickly. The next question I have, and that's for our Telus representative, I have a little box sitting on my desk right now, which I ordered, and it's so that Telus does not have to use a landline anymore, but that it will be a signal that goes through the air for my home phone. And when I questioned the person that phoned me from Telus about this, I said, well, you're trying to get rid of the landlines. And he said, yes. So in other words, I think what we're seeing is perhaps, and the question is this also part of that direction that Telus is taking today, that these towers will also go to that home phone?
So I think there's kind of a couple pieces to that question. Telus doesn't want to get rid of a landline because that's pure profit for us. Like, truly, from a business standpoint, customers that pay for landlines, that infrastructure has been paid for on our end for 50 years. Like, we paid off putting that cable in the ground a long time ago, so we're making money off landlines. What we see, though, is customers don't want landlines. They want things like the wireless home phone, right?
Right.
That you have sitting on your counter, because they want to be able to put that in their cottage. They want to be able to take that phone number when they go camping. So we're seeing that. We're seeing customers not want to put copper cable in the ground from a infrastructure and utilities maintenance standpoint. And then the last part of that is in rural Alberta, so in your area particular and all the way over to the Saskatchewan border, we have very, very old pieces of equipment called carriers. Some of those carriers are 60 years old. When they start to fail, they will trip and phone 911 by a short in the system itself. And you can't get parts for them anymore. The alternative to a carrier is $250,000 piece of equipment that might serve 5 customers. So then it becomes what's cost effective. Do we upgrade the cellular network and now people can do data and video and homeschooling and remote health care? Or do we spend $250,000 and fix a carrier for 5 people? So there's a whole bunch of things. We like landlines. They're incredibly stable and they work when the power goes out. So.
But you don't like them enough to offer them at reasonable prices.
Yeah, so there's
they
there's a fun thing. We can't because the federal government regulates what we charge for them. Bet you didn't know that one. So in the town of Brooks, you can get a home phone for about $10. But in a little hamlet of Rosemary, you can't. And that is simply from federal regulation. So you can take that one to your MPs and tell them that from all of our standpoints, that old mentality of ILEC, so that incumbent carrier piece, shouldn't even exist in today's day and age. Yeah, sorry, that was my rant for the day. I see Brian waving, and I'm not sure if that's the white flag going enough with the tangent.
No, Brian, go ahead.
Well, I don't want to belabor your time too much more, but I'm going to throw another coal on this fire, and that's SpaceX, Elon Musk, and his theory that all these towers are going to become redundant and we'll all use satellites to beam these signals throughout the world. Over the last year, he has launched over, I think it's close to 6,000 satellites into orbit to do this. His goal is to be up to 16,000 by the end of within a year or two. And yeah, all these, I mean, the theory is, and I don't understand it a lot, but I think the theory is that the towers disappear and we use totally wireless communications through satellite. Your thoughts?
Oh, okay. So these are Teresa's personal opinions, not the big capital Telus personal opinions. Okay. So I'm just going to say, Teresa, as an individual, I don't love supporting any company that doesn't pay taxes in Canada, doesn't promote jobs in Canada, doesn't support your charities, your children, your schools. I have a real problem with an American company coming in and to get on that SpaceX system right now is going to cost you about $800 US. You as an individual, and none of that comes back to our communities. Nothing. So I have a problem with that. If they want to play in the sandbox, their hands should be tied by the CRTC like every other provider in Canada. Either that or let Verizon buy Telus, and then like it's just an inequitable playing field. And that's what gets our goat is I would rather compete with everybody on a level playing field, but you can't compete if the government ties one set of hands and not the other. So that's my feelings on Elon Musk and what he's doing. So this is me. That's that small town girl in me going like, it drives me crazy, right? Like I employ 25 people in your municipality. He doesn't employ anybody.
Well, good for you.
Anyway.
Telus has wonderful employees. The ones that we see in person, but when we talk on the phone to some of them, we're never as impressed. That's just my personal beliefs. So, Teresa, it's been delightful listening to you. We could go on all day, but I know we have a 11:30 public hearing. So we better let you carry on with your day. And
Thank you.
Thank you.
And thanks for having me. Like I said, anytime you want me back, just fire me an email and we'll work out an arrangement for me to come on over.
All right.
Thanks, everybody. Have a wonderful day. Stay warm.
Yes. You also. All right. I see that Maria has rejoined us. And so we'll move to item 7, public hearings. And so we need a motion to move into public hearing. And Ellen will move that. All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. So Maria, take it away and tell us what's up today in the public hearing world.
Thank you, Madam Reeve. This is a public hearing for a land use amendment bylaw 2000-21. The purpose of this application is to redesignate a 1.8 hectare, 4.45 acre parcel of land from agriculture to single lot agriculture to allow for the 3rd subdivision out of a quarter section. This subdivision was approved by MPC this morning, and a condition of that subdivision was that the land use amendment be passed. There were no concerns heard from adjacent landowners as of February 4th, and we haven't received any since that date. And there were no comments or concerns from any of the required referral agencies. So it is staff's recommendation. Oh, no, sorry, this is public hearing, not 2nd and 3rd reading yet. That's all from me.
Any questions? Seeing no questions, we need a motion now to move out of public hearing. Clarence is moving us out of the public hearing. All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. And so that does take us to the bylaws. Maria?
Okay, so it is staff's recommendation that 2nd and 3rd reading be given to bylaw 2000-21 to redesignate these portions of the southeast of 28-17-13 from agriculture to single lot agriculture.
Could I get a motion for 2nd reading? Wayne moves. Discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. And for 3rd reading? Hubie moves. All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. Was there anything else today on our agenda that you're involved with, Maria?
I have the planning and development report as well, but if there's any questions, then I would love to answer. Otherwise, it can be presented.
Yeah, we'll go do that right now. Planning and development report is item 11.1. Are there any questions for Maria while she's here? Not seeing any questions. So would someone, Clarence?
Move acceptance of the written land use planning and development report.
All right. All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. Thanks, Maria.
Thank
you. Have a good rest of your day. So at 11:45, we have Cole, and I have not seen that he has joined us yet. So we will go to, looking for something quick and easy.
my report, Molly.
Okay, Mark. Thank you. Item 12.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. I'm not trying to tell you what to do or anything, Reeve Douglas, but filling the gap till 11:45. So, municipal enforcement continue doing what they do. Over the past period, they were looking for intersection safety with focus on winter driving, alcohol, drug impairment, and fatigue. We talked about winter driving before. That's driving carelessly, recklessly for what the road conditions are and such. And anyway, with monitoring for that, there were 8 warnings issued and 2 tickets. And yeah, it actually went rather well. For the month, 28 warnings were issued, 23 tickets, 10 total investigations over the month, lots of speeding and other bylaw matters for them. Fleet services, I guess between fleet and operations, we've been having Petro-Canada fill our remote bulk fuel tanks, and they now have remote monitoring of those tanks. So we have sight into those tanks and what their fluid levels are. We haven't had anything in the recent past, knock on wood, but any significant change in fluid levels and stuff, we'll be able to see what time of day and stuff that happened, and maybe flag any theft of fuel to tie things down a little bit better than not knowing what's going on in those bulk tanks. Operations wise, really just cold, right? This week we haven't had operators out at all. When we send large equipment out in temperatures like this, things just break. It's also putting potentially our employees at risk and stuff. So really, we've shut down operations for the better part this week. And otherwise, grader operators have been doing brush control and vegetation management along road allowances, focusing on paved roads, working north and east of Rosemary at this time. Truck drivers have responded to some of those snow events, ensuring intersections are free and clear of ice and whatnot. So some traction with salt, sand, and de-icing. Otherwise, they're 72% complete the stockpiling program as weather permits. Recertifications of operators and stuff for first aid and things, those have been going on throughout winter as well. And we've advertised for our seasonal positions. It seems like we've got some returning, so we'll look to fill the vacancies with new people as we get into that. 15th Avenue, 2nd Street West should be well known now that the traffic lights at the north end of Brooks are fully active. That was partnership between Alberta Transportation, City of Brooks, County of Newell to get that in, and there's been lots of public advertisement of that through social media streams by the City of Brooks ourselves and whatnot. And reminder that was in effort to open up the potential for future development of the vacant lot on the northwest corner of that intersection. We continue working on the Rural Water Project Phase 2 assessment for future presentation to the council for direction. Range Road 14-5 upgrading, working on securing an engineer on that, getting preliminary design and whatnot going so that we can get construction estimates and get that work looked at for summer completion. We're also working on the long-term aggregate supply, JD Mollard, and working with them on what we can see for the longevity of the county moving forward in that. One Tree Road overlay, all of that work is tendered. Bridge file work has been just about complete, and we're looking forward to the overlay come summer. Other business, we continue working on a number of things. Council awarded the wastewater lagoon farmed lands lease opportunities in January. We continue working on processes, procedure documentation. Staff are working on procurement of capital acquisitions for the year and stuff as approved by budget. And yeah, we just continue plugging away with things. When you get to the permit activity report, I didn't have an update attached to this report. So when we come back next month, I'll have everything current for council and see whether we're trending consistent with how last year ended or whether we're on a little bit of a rebound, but I wouldn't anticipate too much change. Any questions from council?
Hubie and Brian?
Thanks, Molly. So Mark, it's pretty rare, but even in January, we had a grader operator in Division 2 grading the roads. There wasn't any snow there. It was something to see him bombing up and down the road with the blade down. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely unique. 12 years so far with Newell. Haven't had a consistent winter yet. Doesn't seem to amaze me that we're grading roads in the middle of winter and sometimes plowing. So welcome to Southern Alberta, where you wait 10 minutes and things change. I think we've all anticipated this current week for a while now. Usually happens in January period, but the extreme cold that we've experienced all week is also a little bit different for operations too. But thank you.
Thanks, Mark.
Brian?
Yeah, Mark, thanks for your report. I noticed that I have two questions. My first one is in regards to the last item you have there with the MOU with the town of Pisano, and just curious why that's why that's in the report, and maybe there's something significant there that I'm not aware of. I understand your background in as far as the ICF. I just didn't think there was that much we did with the town of Pisano. I understand why. I'm just curious about, maybe give me an update on the level of support or the level of cooperation that you currently do with the town of Pisano.
So there's a bylaw from 1983. Admittedly, the County of Newell has since rescinded that bylaw, but it is still active on the town of Pisano's bylaw listing. Probably a failure of communication on my part, one way or another. There are some perimeter roads when you come out the west side of Pisano southbound to go to the Pisano Dam. There are two perimeter gravel roads about a mile in length each that the county maintains on behalf of the town of Pisano. Part of the bylaw, however, is there's about 100-meter stretch of asphalt on the south side of the railway tracks, southbound out the east side of Pisano at the water treatment plant and distribution center. Back in 1983, the bylaw and agreement was that the county would maintain the 1 mile of gravel road running east-west at the southerly limits of the town, in exchange if the town took care of the 100 meters of pavement on behalf of the County of Newell. And appreciating that pavement is not necessarily as affordable to maintain as the gravel, but it can be expensive when time comes, asphalt pothole patching and stuff like that. And they don't have necessarily the equipment that we do for the gravel. Councils of the day agreed for that exchange in lieu of any compensation whatsoever. So under the ICF, we talk about where things haven't been agreed to. We want to have the fees for service laid out as to what's being maintained, what level of service is provided, because that drives what kind of costs fall behind that. And that's all we want to work through. And then Town of Pisano would like to rescind that bylaw, get those old bylaws off the books, roll it in under the ICF as we're proposing there, and that's why that reference is part of the report.
Thanks, Mark. That was very well understood and very well articulated. Good for you doing that and for finding that old bylaw. My second question is in regards to when the EID crosses the county roads. In the past, I've seen where there develops a bit of a bump there, or a divot, I call it, in the road. Is there ways that that can be corrected, like when they going forward? Because in my area here, I think they're going to cross the roads in my division probably 4 times. They've done 2 already, and there's another 2 coming in. So I'm not. It's never horrible. It's just that when you're going down the road and suddenly there's a divot, you could get some error if you're actually doing 80 clicks. So I'm just curious if there's procedures in place to try to mitigate that.
Topic of discussion with the EID has been for a number of years as we continue to try to resolve that issue with construction practices. Anytime you bring in new material, non-native to what the rest of the road is constructed of, it is subject to absorbing moisture in a different way. So if it holds more moisture, it may retract or expand differently than the rest of the road. So that settlement that you're seeing over that excavation is due to some of that. Some methods that a person can use on that increases cost, but expand the actual distance for which that excavation takes place. Potentially, instead of doing a slot cut to drop a culvert or pipeline crossing in, you come up with vertical walls over top of the pipe, and then from the top of the pipe you flare it out at about a 45-degree angle, and it'll make the distance larger in that transition rather than getting a thump immediately. You'll cross one of those transitions and hit another method that I guess I should propose to them. We've done it in pavement, is actually angling the cut across the road on an angle so that one wheel of the vehicle drops first and then the second, and same thing on the other side, rather than getting that wall where both tires hit it at the same time. That can often alleviate some of that impact that you feel in your vehicle and improve the driving experience.
Thanks, Mark.
Other questions for Mark? Hubie.
Just to add to that, Mark, there was a school bus driver here complained about a certain culvert that throws the kids up off their seats when she flies over it. I told her, well, that expands in the wintertime. It pushes the frost, pushes the culvert up. When spring comes, it flattens out and everything's good. So don't drive so fast.
Hopefully that'll work. Any other questions for Mark? Kelly.
Just to follow up, in our shoulder pulls, we've experienced that where we've dropped culverts right after the road build, and a lot of ratepayers question that process. Why do you? So that may be a point of education. Just keep that in your mind. I don't know that it's going to solve everybody's queries, but from our experience on this side, we've ran across a lot of those dips from culverts that have been inserted after the road is shoulder pulled.
Yeah, further to that, you know, Hubie, I wasn't a rural school kid, but I did get to ride the bus a few times. I always thought that was the best part of the day, flying out of your seat anytime I was on the bus. But those buses are not your typical passenger vehicle, right? The suspension in them is not something that you enjoy hitting those kind of obstructions and stuff. To Councillor Crispin, I guess to elaborate a little bit more, not take too much time, but when we put those culverts in and stuff, they get compacted as well, right? And that's not to say that the road that was built in 1965 has the same level of compaction either, which is why they are moving like that. But I do agree, it's an education thing. A little bit of education for council and anybody in today. Anything that is really significant, we do put up rough road signs and stuff. We've got a few of them up south of Bazzano and whatnot in some transition areas like that. And then sometimes we tag them with orange lath marking on the shoulder of the road, or and flags and whatnot, just to identify the hazards. So it's a challenge. It happens everywhere. This is not limited to the county of Newell, and it's when you do those small kind of improvements rather than doing a complete road construction rebuild. But even in that, there's no guarantee. We've seen some of that just in our larger bridge files, even when they cross some of our paved roads and stuff. You get a different level of compaction, different moisture in there, and it moves differently. It's a challenge. I always like to say that if it's a divot, something that you drop into, at least we can add some material to improve it. If it's a hump, or if you get too much material in there, a hump is always a hump unless you come back and cut it off the road. And that can pose some of its own challenges as well. So it's just how material moves differently, and we do our best to try to make sure it matches, but it is challenging.
Anything else for Mark? I don't see that Cole has joined us. So perhaps he is having some cold weather issues. And so we'll leave Mark and wait to see what happens with Cole. And we'll just move on to a few minor items before noon. So we'll head to 11.8, checks for payment.
Cole's here.
Oh, Cole is here. Great. Thank you. Cole, perfect. Did I just miss you? Were you there all along?
I had trouble finding my login ID for this meeting, so Ariana emailed it to me, so that's how I got it.
Oh, excellent. Well, welcome, Cole. How are things with the bitter cold in your business?
Touch wood, we are doing quite well, so that's a good thing.
Excellent. Go ahead.
Okay, so thank you, Reeve Douglas and councillors. I have a pretty short report. Everything is going according to plan. All our operations are normal. The only thing I did put in my report is we did have something that affected some county residents. We had, the EID had a major construction project where they are putting in a pipeline instead of their canal leading from Rock Lake and heading east. So it crossed our main transmission line that heads north-south and supplies water to Bazzano, Rosemary, Dutchess, and Patricia, as well as the rural customers up in the north area as well. So in order to facilitate their line crossing, and so that they could utilize the full depth of Rock Lake, we had to lower our transmission main. So we coordinated with MP Engineering and Brooks Asphalt as the contractors. We scheduled a shutdown. We drained the line, isolated it, drained it, cut it, put in a drop in it, and installed it, poured some cement thrust blocks, charged it back up with water, flushed it, and put it back into service. And all told, it took about 24 hours. So it went perfectly according to plan. We had done some risk mitigations, did some risk analysis if there were things to go wrong, but all in all, it went excellent and there was no issues. So that was the main thing that we had going on in the last month. But like I said, everything else is normal. And with this cold weather, everything seems to be going according to plan. So that's good.
That is good. Any questions for Cole? Clarence.
Well, first of all, Reeve Douglas, if Cole goes out and has trouble now, it's going to be on you for asking about it. But no, seriously, Cole, just who does the EID compensate us for that type of thing?
Yes.
Okay.
It would have been a lot easier to just install there's a special type of isolation valve that you can kind of install, but it would have been about $60,000 and they balked at that price. But looking back at it, hindsight's always 20/20. If they would have been more forthcoming, they already drilled underneath the Highway 36 and had their depth set and everything before they even got final approval from us. So they couldn't adjust their height and everything. It was already said and done. So, and then they balked at the price of doing it properly, in my mind. If we wanted to mitigate all risks, we could have went a different way. But they balked at the price of it. So it worked out just fine anyway, but it could have been done a little bit better, and maybe more communication on their part would have been a little bit better. But looking back on it, everything went fine, so there's no issues with it. So it's all said and done, and they haven't completed the hookup as far as I'm aware of. Yet they were still working back from east to west to where they had bored underneath the highway, so to complete the connection. So they're supposed to inform us when they're going to be digging where we had lowered our line, and then but there's the major issues with it are all done. So we'll just supervise when it comes time to when they're actually installing the pipe over top of ours.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Brian.
Yeah, in that regards, Cole, like when you had to, I'm assuming that the isolation valve would have allowed you to not have to drain that whole line. What is the time frame that it does take for that to occur? And if I'm wrong about the draining, having any isolation valve to assist you in isolating that, then correct me. But I'm assuming that's what you meant by that.
Yes, if we would install this special isolation plug valve, it was a specialized company. They would have had to come down, and like I said, it was about a $60,000 touch. But you could have put it basically anywhere on the existing line, and you could have made the isolated section a lot shorter, and it wouldn't have been an issue because you wouldn't have to deal with, like you said, draining the line times. So the closest isolation valve was on the south side of the highway number 1, and just on the north side of it was really close to the dig site. So I said to them that wasn't feasible because we know just by doing the math on it, line diameter, volume of water in that pipe over a certain amount of distance, it would have taken several days because it was 5 kilometers plus. So what we did find was with the slope of the line, we were able to isolate it at those 2 places, but we were able to draw it down from a high spot where we had an air release valve and an isolation valve. So that was about 850 meters. And in that, it took us about 8 hours to drain that 850 meters. But that was all calculated in that whole construction time frame because we knew we had about 36 hours of storage in Patricia, and that was our limiting factor. That would have been the first place to run out. So that was all considered in the whole scope of the project.
Thanks, Cole.
You're welcome.
Anything else today?
That's all I had. If there was no other questions, I'm done.
All right. Well, can we get a motion to accept the municipal reports? Wayne will move that. All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you, Cole. And I'm really worried now about asking that question. But maybe this will work. We had our big day yesterday of freeze-ups, so maybe it'll escape you altogether.
Here's hoping.
And that was about a power outage, so take care.
You too.
All right, Council, how long do you want to break today? We are at noon, and we have a 1 o'clock delegation. So do you want to meet back ahead of time, or do you want to have an hour off? Brian.
I have a short meeting at 20 to 1, so I won't be able to. I'll be back at 1, but not before then. So.
Okay, well, Tracy?
I must be confused. When is that today, our meeting with the RCMP? Is that not at 12:30 today, or am I mixed up again? Did I get an email?
Councillor Fife, 12:30 is the RCMP and council.
Today?
Yeah, discussion on policing priorities. Yeah.
Oh, good. Thank you. Thank you. You know what? For some reason, I forgot about that too. So that's good. Thank you, Tracy. Thank you, Mark. So 12:30, we'll be back here. I'll let you go. Bye-bye.